Growing up, I watched a great deal of YouTube channels which would play a part in shaping who I am today. There were the gaming channels like Markiplier and PewDiePie, the commentary channels like, I'm kind of embarrassed that I watched some of them because a lot of them actually shaped me in the wrong direction, so I won't mention them. Anyways, this video is not about those types of channels because if there's one thing I learned from commentary channels, it's to never become one. No, what this video is about is something far more formative for me and far more old and primal. In fact, it involves some of the oldest videos I ever watched on YouTube. It's the animation channels, the re-uploads from Newgrounds, the stunning 3D works of people like Monty Ohm, various episodes of Death Battle, and stop-motion talents from someone like Forest Fire 101. Film Cow made videos like Charlie the Unicorn and Llamas with Hats, alongside a lot of other very dark animations I definitely shouldn't have been watching at my age. There were hybrid shows like Sanity Not Included, where they spliced in video game machinimas with actual animated shorts. There was Red vs. Blue, or fully animated video game parodies like Minecraft The Noob Adventures. Even small video series centered around the Dark Souls experience, like the ones that Scott Falco created, or animated shows for channels like Game Grumps. Heck, Egoraptor was one of my favorite animators alongside Oni, Psychic Pebbles, and Harry Partridge, all of whom have gone on to make incredible things, some of which you guys might be familiar with, even if you're not familiar with any of those names. Needless to say, animation has been a staple of YouTube since its inception, and it hasn't always been in the best place on YouTube. At the moment though, animation on YouTube is on the rise, and it has been for a while. It's led to some of the most popular indie animations in a time when corporate greed is at an all-time high, where soulless reboots, adaptations, and safe bets are always made instead of the risky, new, and experimental types of stories. Animation on YouTube wasn't always profitable. In fact, it was often the exact opposite. Not like this video, thanks to today's sponsor, Aura. I want you guys to think about a time when a company you trusted announced a data breach involving your personal information. What went through your mind as you processed the news? What actions did you take to respond? And most importantly, what actions did you not take to respond? Because not responding or taking any action in this moment right now could leave you vulnerable to future data breaches. After all, hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. So if you live in America like I do, you might want to listen to what I have to say. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from National Public Data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth dates. And members of the hacker group have reportedly released this information for free online. I don't know about you guys, but as a person who has had their passwords stolen in the past, that sort of thing is incredibly terrifying to me. Oftentimes we think it can't happen to us until it does, and we're left without any idea of what to do or who to call. Even if you're doing your best to keep your identity safe, things like this can still happen. And by the time you realize it has happened, it'll already be too late. That's why it's so important to get ahead of it and prepare for the worst. If you weren't taking precautions with your personal information online before, this should be a huge wake-up call. You've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But for me personally, I'm not too worried because I use Aura. Aura alerts me if my phone number, email, or social security number is on the dark web. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to get access to my credit or bank accounts. They also give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario ever happen to me again. There's also a ton of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one easy-to-use app. You can go to my link, aura.com/scrit, to try 14 days for free. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data has been exposed. I highly recommend you do this right now because not only is National Public Data not going to do anything to help you, they're probably not going to face any repercussions for this leak. And if there aren't any repercussions, that more than likely means it's going to happen again. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/script and try 2 weeks for free. Anyways, back to the rest of the video. For this video, I want this to be more of a personal retelling of how I experienced this evolution rather than a full deep dive on the topic. I'm more concerned with the lessons we can learn from past experiences than to fully document every last bit of indie animation online and get behind the scenes on what happened and where they are now. I'm sure there are plenty of videos on YouTube doing exactly that. But for this video, I would much rather provide my experience as a bystander to all of this because I was there from the very beginning. I was a viewer who saw YouTube change with every passing year. I remember when Ross, that being Rubber Ross or Rubber Ninja, first made a video discussing the harm that an engagement-based algorithm would do to animation on YouTube back in the 2010s. But let's rewind the clock to the mid-2000s, to the time when YouTube was first created. I remember when I was really young, my sister had invited a friend over to watch a video on our family computer. It was on a website that I didn't recognize. And as the curious younger brother that I was, I decided to watch along. This would be my first ever experience with YouTube, and it would be the first video I ever watched on the platform. It would also be the one that I endlessly quoted until I could repeat every word of it from start to finish. The video you see on screen was one of the first animations on the website, and one of the most popular at the time as well. It was a little video called Charlie the Unicorn. Now, some people in my audience might be too young to recognize that name, but I think for the majority of my audience, who YouTube says are about my age or older, I think a lot of you just got hit with a brick wall of nostalgia at the very mention of it. Film Cow produced a great body of works and was really one of the first channels to do 2D animation on the platform. Of course, there wasn't too much animation in general, but what do you expect? It's the 2000s. Temper your expectations just a little bit here. The iPhone wasn't even invented yet. This is a pre-Minecraft world, people. Alongside their more popular works like Charlie the Unicorn and Llamas with Hats, they also produced shorts like Ferrets, Detective Mittens, A Depressed Whale, and Bino the Elephant, all of which were extremely dark and probably not something I should have been watching at the time. Also during this time, we had creators like Weebles creating animation memes before the terms meme and animation meme even fucking existed. And if you don't believe me, then please feel free to avoid finishing the following sentences for me. Badgers, 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 badgers. Narwhals, narwhals. Dugong, dugong, it's... Yeah, that's what I fucking thought. Now that I've successfully confused Gen Alpha while tickling the nostalgia centers for Gen Z and millennials, I also want to talk about another early YouTube channel which pioneered stop motion on the platform. A channel not often discussed these days, but which was instrumental to YouTube's development as a platform. Forest Fire 101. For those who don't recognize the name, I think you'll probably recognize this tune if I just hum it to you. And if you recognize that tune, then you know exactly what channel I'm talking about. In fact, his videos predate the ones that I mentioned before. He is the OG of all OG animators on YouTube, and almost no one ever remembers him when I bring him up in conversation. But for me, Forest was never a channel about singing ducks asking for grapes. It was a channel about the Lego Batman animations that he made. From their voiceovers in early videos, you can tell these animations are made by a child, and they're not exactly made very well. However, you can also see that this kid is improving with every video. They're always making something new, something better. This channel was run by someone who's only a few years older than I was at the time. Forestfire 101 was one of the first to inspire me to make YouTube videos of my own. I saw another kid making videos for thousands to watch with nothing more than a camera, some Lego sets, and passion. The other animations I watched were too polished, too professional, too out of reach. But I had Legos, I had a camcorder and a microphone, I had an internet connection. I could make Lego animations too. As a kid, after watching these videos, I actually ended up picking my parents' old camcorder up and just making whatever videos I thought were funny or cool. Just a bunch of crude stop-motion videos with my ad-libbed voiceovers, because I refused to write a script, and even when I did, it was very bare bones. Of course, I am far too embarrassed to show them to any of you in this video, but they are still out there somewhere on the internet. Whoever wants to try and find them, you can. The channel I posted them on is still public to my knowledge. Anyways, I view Forestfire 101 as a bit of a trailblazer in many ways. I know there were plenty of animators from Newgrounds who had their content reposted to YouTube, where they then gained notoriety and popularity, but for me, Forestfire 101 was my first YouTube animator. He was the one who inspired me to create something just for the fun of it. I even thought I wanted to become an animator when I grew up, until I found out how terribly animators are treated in the industry. And even now, almost 20 years later, not much has changed about how we treat our animators. In fact, we might even be treating them worse than we ever did before. However, there is a silver lining to this, so stay tuned. Back on track. After this age of Lego stop-motion animation, I also recall an age of Newgrounds content reposted to the website. We'll call this the Newgrounds era of YouTube, happening around 2008 to 2012. These were videos like Brawl Taunts, Nintendo, spelled with a number 10, because that's what they did back in the day. And other game parodies like the Awesome series from Egoraptor, ripped straight from the mythical lands of Newgroundia. Kid me didn't know what the fuck a Newgrounds was, but all the dick jokes in those low-res reposts were funny, so I didn't really care. It was stuff I and others would constantly quote in school, much to the chagrin of our teachers. During this time, videos like the Awesome series from Egoraptor and Eddsworld would rise to prominence, although Eddsworld wasn't exactly from Newgrounds, or at least I don't think they were. All of these videos played their own part in animation on YouTube and its history, but I want to specifically focus on Eddsworld for one reason and one reason only. It was actually a show with episodes. Sure, a crudely written and poorly voiced show with jankily animated episodes, but episodes nonetheless. There was a bit of continuity in the writing, a bit of story and consistency about the channel, and not only that, it wasn't relying on anything like a Left 4 Dead or a Halo Reach to be popular. They were short animations which slowly grew and evolved as the creator got better and better at making them. Every video a little more polished, a little funnier, better animation, longer run times. Sure, we had to wait longer between every episode, but as a kid I was always waiting for the next Eddsworld video to come out, up until the day that the creator died of cancer, years after making the channel. If you want a better retrospective for Eddsworld, I'm sure there are plenty of videos out there which can explain the history, but for me and my experience as one of the viewers of Eddsworld at the time, it was the first time I had ever watched a creator I liked die. It was the first time that it became clear to me that there were people behind all the silly pictures and dick jokes on my screen. And in many ways, even something negative can inspire you. It told me that life is short, and sometimes far shorter than we want it to be. The people of this YouTube animation era never made what they did for money. They did not make it because they thought there would be a future in it, or that it would get them a TV series. They made it because they wanted to, because it was fun. Because some people have a drive to create something no matter the incentive, and sometimes despite the lack of incentive. Let's fast forward to the 2010s, when YouTube decided to change its algorithm, and how it created the next era of YouTube, which I will term the dark ages of animation. I remember growing up with so many animation parodies. Anytime there was a new game coming out, you'd get at least 5 animated parody videos alongside it. But then YouTube changed its algorithm to reward watch time over viewership and subscriber count. It spelled tough times for some animators on the platform. Most creators faded into obscurity. Some, like Egoraptor, pivoted towards gaming content, but others persisted. Others continued to animate. And before anyone gets the wrong idea, all of these are valid reactions to the changes of the time. No one here is a better or worse artist for determining the opportunity cost of animation on YouTube. For a while though, YouTube was almost exclusively dominated by gaming content. Nothing but Let's Plays from top to bottom. This is the PewDiePie Let's Play era of YouTube, and it's one I think most of us remember. Sometimes fondly, other times not so fondly. However, during these dark ages, this was also the time where we saw some of the best and most professionally made animations to come out on the platform ever. When there's a will, there's a way, and when an artist has a vision, almost nothing will stop them from realizing it. Monty Oum was one of the animators I had watched very early on, without recognizing his name. His old Master Chief vs. Samus video was my first exposure to him back in the day, because I was a massive Halo fan. And during this gaming-dominated era of YouTube, I would soon be introduced to what I considered to be one of YouTube's biggest steps towards a professional-level indie animation, RWBY. Now, I know there are plenty of people who will rightly shit all over the show or meme it to death, but I also think those same people would be equally willing to concede that the series was amazing before its original creator and lead animator Monty Oum passed away from an allergy due to surgical equipment. When the Red trailer first came out, I remember just being awestruck by how good it was. I had never seen such a fluid, well-choreographed fight scene in a professional work, let alone fucking YouTube videos. Here it was, an incredible soundtrack, a well-choreographed fight scene, and a story told without any dialogue. I could feel the emotions, the passion, and the care coming through the screen, and I became a fan from day one. Funnily enough though, I didn't end up watching most of the episodes on YouTube. I would usually go to the Rooster Teeth website and just watch it every fucking Wednesday when it dropped. In a lot of ways, RWBY was my has-been hotel. Foreshadowing, check. I think a lot of people tend to discount RWBY these days simply because of how the story ended up and how the animation took a nosedive. But one thing RWBY deserves credit for is just how much it blew the door open for animation on YouTube. It was genuinely the first of its kind, a professionally produced indie animation with full-length episodes, voice acting, and a kick-ass soundtrack, as well as an entire team of production. It wasn't just a good show, it was a blueprint for everything that came after it. Not only was animation still possible on YouTube, but it could become bigger than it ever had been before. RWBY signaled to everyone that passionate people did not need to rely on traditional animation studios to get a show made and watched. It told every aspiring animator that YouTube was a viable option for creating and monetizing an animated series, something which Channel Frederator seemed to take to heart. Shows like Bravest Warriors as well as Bee and Puppycat got their starts during this time period. That was until Frederator realized they weren't making much of any money at all on the show and decided to monetize by putting everything behind a paywall. And then no one paid for it because everyone had gotten used to watching it for free. This was all happening during the years of about 2012 to 2015. During this era of YouTube and a little bit before it, We would also notice the rise of 3D animation as a whole. Open source software like Blender and Source Filmmaker empowered anyone and everyone to learn the medium, and YouTube empowered them to show it off to everybody. I'll say that this era of YouTube was when this trend really started taking off. Not just with professionally produced shows like RWBY, but also with personal projects, fan animation, and Minecraft parodies. Yes, Minecraft parodies were, in and of itself, an era of YouTube animation. This is the era when we saw Minecraft Wild Adventures from MLG Haunt, and pretty much any janky Source Filmmaker video that you can think of. The Newgrounds animators of old started to trickle back onto the scene, and channels like Game Grumps allowed animators to thrive on their well-built platform. This was an era of YouTube which had been dropped into the abyss and slowly clawed its way back into relevance with sheer tenacity and passion. But there was something else occurring on the horizon. As 2015 ran its course, a new type of YouTube format would rise to prominence. Two creators with their own independent channels would take a popular format like Storytime videos and add one twist to it that would change the course of YouTube animation forever. These creators weren't just sitting down in front of a camera and telling stories about their lives. They were making full-blown animatics to go along with it. These two creators would come to be known as Swoozie and Domix, respectively, and their channels would be the blueprints for the next era of YouTube animation, the Storytime era. This is the era of YouTube many people point to as the time when animation was fully back on YouTube in a big way. Storytime animation wasn't a well-produced series made by a team of people, or a painstakingly animated episode which took months to create, but which only came out to be around 2 to 5 minutes. Yes, there were many channels who increased the quality of their videos, but during the early days of Storytime animation, the animation part was very minimal at best. And that's why it was so successful. These animators discovered one thing that many animators take years to learn, which is to choose your battles. They focused on what was important, which is the personal stories, and they compromised on the things which were maybe not as important, which was a fully animated and rendered video. The animations were a dressing, and the story was the focus and the main point of every video. And the YouTube algorithm loved it. This content had the advantage of style that animation would provide, on top of being an engaging video that was long enough for YouTube to want to promote it. Not only that, but these videos were a lot easier to make and a lot less time intensive than something like a fully animated short. Before YouTube Shorts existed, that is. This was the era of channels like Jaden Animation, Odd Ones Out, Something Else YT, Illymation, just to name a few. And that's not to say that Storytime animation was an easy video to make either. After all, most Storytime videos were just some guy filming themselves for 30 minutes to an hour, yapping about their day, and maybe editing it down into a coherent and satisfying story. The reason something like Storytime animation was so great during the era of 2016 to 2019 was simply because it struck a happy middle ground between effort and efficiency. Creators could come out with content just frequently enough to satisfy the algorithm and make some really good money while doing so. Not only that, but it was a style of entertainment unique to YouTube. You wouldn't be seeing videos like this anywhere else. In fact, the medium was so accessible that during this time, I actually contemplated whether or not I should become a Storytime animator as well. Dust off the old drawing tablet and write a story I wanted to tell my audience. Problem was, though, I was not really any good at drawing, and I don't think I have very many interesting stories to tell about my real life. Ironically enough, this is a little bit of story of my life, but more so focused on more interesting topics, I guess. Anyways, I do recall a distinct and strange shift on YouTube during this era. This was a time on YouTube which I would characterize as the rise of drama and tea-spilling channels. Although drama content had taken root and grown sometime between this era of animation and the last. Because of this, alongside the Storytime animators, we also saw a lot of commentary channels whose only contribution to the space was to criticize and belittle those animators for views. Whether on Twitter or in a YouTube video, I recall that these channels always seemingly had a bone to pick with Storytime animators. These were the Daft Pinas, the Ellis Marks, and the PK Russells of the space. God damn, that's a lineup in retrospect, huh? In any case, Storytime animation wasn't just big. It was big enough to turn its critics into big creators as well. Even critics of shows from previous eras like RWBY only rose to prominence during this 2016 to 2019 era of YouTube. Genuinely, I can't remember any large commentary or critique channel going after an animation on YouTube before 2016, much less getting big off of it. Before this era, it was all about Hollywood, Disney, or anime for commentary critique. I mention this because this was a symptom of a much greater truth about animation on YouTube. It had finally grown to a relevance which made it not just interesting on its own, but interesting enough to criticize en masse. And it was during the end of this era that we see animation YouTube transition to its current era. Hazbin Hotel's pilot dropped in late October of 2019, only a few months before the global pandemic, which would come to define this new era of animation on YouTube. Hazbin Hotel and its sister series, Helluva Boss, was a massive success, and in a lot of ways, it still is to this day. From my personal perspective, I had not ever bothered to watch the pilot when it came out, nor any of the episodes of Helluva Boss until years after they were released. What's important in this case, however, is that I had heard of it, despite not ever having watched it. Not only did I hear of it, but it was everywhere. Conversations, artworks, references, commentaries, critiques, entire channels owe their success solely to VivziePop and her show, and dunking on it. And in fact, this video might just owe quite a bit of its views to VivziePop if I decide to put her show in the thumbnail. Hazbin Hotel was the first animated show to really capture people's passion in a way that we had never truly seen before on YouTube. It wasn't just a well done and fully realized 2D cartoon episode. It was a well done and fully realized cartoon episode on YouTube. Hazbin Hotel was the first to genuinely feel as though we might see it on Adult Swim or some other type of traditional television network. The characters all seemed compelling at a glance, and the premise of the show left a lot of room for really fun ideas to be explored in the fandoms. Hazbin Hotel ended up opening the door for many indie studios to follow. Lackadaisy, Murder Drones, Knights of Guinevere, Amazing Digital Circus, The Legends of Vox Machina. Almost none of these would have been able to exist on their own without the path that Hazbin Hotel forged. And that's not to say that the creators of any of those aforementioned shows owe VivziePop anything or that VivziePop is responsible for their success. It's acknowledging the fact that Hazbin was the greatest step towards fully independent animation on YouTube that we had ever seen at that point. And it was free to watch. What makes this era of YouTube different from previous eras is just how much YouTubers managed to break into the mainstream here. Hazbin and Vox Machina got picked up by Amazon Prime, Digital Circus by Netflix. Smiling Friends is from YouTubers by YouTubers and was fully produced on Adult Swim. And while Smiling Friends is more of an example of YouTube veterans breaking into traditional media in a more traditional way, everything else got their start online in some way. And YouTube was a massive contributing factor to their success and popularity. I mean, you could even say that for Smiling Friends too. Vox Machina had started as a Twitch stream which uploaded VODs of its D&D campaign to YouTube. Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss both started on YouTube, with the latter running through an independent studio called Spindlehorse and posting the content straight to YouTube. Digital Circus is only the latest in this era of incredible animated shows which have blown the doors off of traditional publication. The pandemic assisted this rise as well. With everyone stuck at home, not only did we stream more of our shows through internet services, but we also got used to it. Streaming became the dominant medium for consuming media during this time period. It's truthfully never gone back. Physical movie theaters are struggling to stay afloat. Traditional studios are having to shut down. The ways in which we used to watch animation has changed. And it's almost all online now, even if it's not on YouTube. That's a bittersweet change, of course, but it has its positives as well. It means animation and the artists who make them rely less and less on middlemen to have their work seen by other people. It means the people who watch it can experience these shows for free, while advertisers take on the brunt of the cost without any of the creative liberties usually granted to a producer. We are currently in an unprecedented era, not just in animation, but in the world as a whole. There is a lot of uncertainty right now, and a lot more we have yet to experience. I don't know what the next era of animation on YouTube might look like. In fact, we might even be in it as we speak. But I can only hope that it will be one where a small group of passionate artists can outcompete and outmaneuver even the largest, most powerful animation studios in the industry. I hope that everyone is empowered to take risks and have their ideas be fully realized. And one day, I hope to be part of that in whatever way I can. I hope that one day this video serves as the origin point of a new era, rather than just some random guy yapping about internet history. But I won't ever make that happen if all I do is talk about the past. So right now, I guess it's time to open up a document and start writing.